Hey there everyone, I'm Kyle with Dirt Bike Channel, and today we're going to review the Kreft Moto suspension job done on this Husky TE300i. Stick around. So I just want to start off by saying that the only reason that you're seeing this is because I really liked what happened with Kreft Moto. When I review a suspension job that has happened, it's because they did a pretty good job. I've done other suspension in the past where it never made it to the channel because I just didn't like the results at all. But I did really like what happened with Kreft Moto. The first thing I want to say is that the person who's going to get the most benefit out of doing a suspension job is somebody who's outside of the weight range for these bikes. I'm not saying that you don't get value if you're inside the weight range for these bikes, but if you're like me where you're kind of between 150 and 180 in pounds, the bikes are kind of designed and set up just for you. So it's harder for a suspension tuner to make big, awesome changes for you because the bikes are kind of designed for you. But the other side of that coin is that the manufacturer is making a guess about what you want, and they have to make it for a broad range of people. Whereas if you go with somebody like Kreft, then you get to have a conversation with them, and then they get to dial in a suspension more for you based on the exact type of riding that you want to do. And that's where the true value comes in with somebody like Kreft Moto, is you get on the phone with them and you spend a long time talking to them about what you want. And here's another thing, your suspension job and your whole experience is going to go better if you have something that you're trying to fix. If you have a certain characteristic that the bike is doing that you want it to stop doing, then that's probably a good thing, because you can tell that to your suspension tuner, aka Kreft Moto in this case, and they can help solve that problem for you. So the more information you give them up front, the better off they're going to be able to, do a job for you. Here's another thing great to say about Kreft Moto. They have this whole mail in your suspension thing dialed in pretty dang good. They send you a box where you put your suspension in it. It's got packing materials in there, and then you send it to them. They do the work and they send it back to you in that same box, and the whole process just works really nicely. They are the best that I have personally seen at this whole mail-in thing and mailing your suspension to them. Another place that Kreft really had things dialed in was with the documentation that I got back with the suspension. Everything from an owner's manual and a setup guide to different baseline settings to try, and the information on what they did and why they did it, and graphs and charts, and suggested settings that you can try and different things. The information that they presented here was second to none. I just go through this, the owner's manual and setup guide. This was fantastic. They talk about clickers in here and how to set sag and how to tune your suspension, and what is compression, what is rebound, what is damping, and how do clickers work, and fine-tuning your suspension. This was really good information here. So this type of thing is something that I was like, okay, this is above and beyond. The documentation that I got back with this thing exceeded anything that I'd gotten from any of the other suspension tuners. Let's talk about revalve control, because that's the thing that Kreft is really specializing in, is this revalve control feature. So a little bit about clickers. So clickers on your forks, typically, in the typical sense that we know them as, they're like a low speed adjuster. Now the reason why I bring that up is because on your shock, everyone knows on shocks, you've got a low speed and a high speed compression adjustment. The revalve control, the best way to think of it, and the best way it's been explained to me, is the revalve control is like adding a high speed adjustment for the compression on your forks. Why is that cool? That's cool because it then allows you to make these big, broad, huge, sweeping changes with just a few clicks right up here on the top of your left fork. So on this bike with this WP Explorer 48 fork, the revalve control ended up being up here on the top of my left fork, and this is now it's kind of like a high-speed compression adjuster right here. I've still got my actual compression adjuster down on the bottom. It's more like a low-speed clicker like you would typically have. And then I've got rebound over here on the right fork. So we're still going to adjust our suspension in the same way. We're still going to use clicks here, a rebound on the top, and compression down on the bottom of this other fork. But now I've got this other adjustment that I can do here, which is revalve. This is where I can make big, huge changes to the suspension, and it does make big changes to it. It's a pretty cool feature. So why would you want to make big sweeping changes, and who is that going to benefit? The reason why you want that is then you can take this bike, and one day you might take it to a motocross track, and the next day you might be doing single track up in the mountains. That's probably how this is going to benefit you the most is if you're that type of rider that you really do need to make huge sweeping changes. I'm not the type of guy that ends up, using clickers a ton. I find something that works and then I kind of roll with that. And I have to have something that works in a lot of different terrain, because some of my riding might be first gear stuff, and then part of the ride is going to be fourth gear, fifth gear stuff, and there's a lot of variety in there. So I'm not the guy that's like doing sweeping changes in the middle of my rides. But if I was going to go to a track one day, a motocross track one day, and then the next day or the next week I might be out in single track, then this is going to be a big thing, because it allows you to make sweeping changes here and then also down on the shock. And yes, they did also do work on the shock, but they even admitted that the shocks are pretty good from the factory. So they made a few changes here and there, but what they're really doing is overhauling these forks and converting this thing over so that it can also have that broad tunability. And these forks are very, very tunable. That's probably another really good strong point about this, is it was very, very tunable. One thing I really enjoyed is they gave me two different baselines to go with. They gave me kind of a trail baseline to do, and it had all the, the clicker settings for the trail baseline. And then they gave me a faster baseline as well to try for like higher speed stuff. And so I tried first the softer setting, and it was very good at absorbing the chop. And the forks were really, really responsive. It was soaking up a ton of stuff, but it was a little bit soft for me. So then I swung over to the other baseline that they gave me, which I thought was really cool. And that baseline was really good for the faster stuff and really good through the whoops. But then in the technical stuff, when I was in first gear and second gear, it just felt a little bit rough. I was getting a little bit too much feedback in my hands, and I kind of felt like the back end was skating around, and I wasn't getting as good a traction as I wanted. So then I ended up kind of to split the difference, because I need the suspension to work really good in first gear and also really good in fourth gear, that type of thing. And so I split the difference between the two baselines that they gave me, and I found a happy place, and I was very, very happy with that. So the fact that they gave me they're like, hey, here's two different recommended settings, was a really cool feature to me. So I already kind of mentioned that the bike is now very good at soaking up like the small chatter, the small rocks, the small bumps. It's very good at that. The other thing that I would say that I think is a big compliment is the fact that the suspension doesn't do anything erratic, and it's very predictable, and it gives me a lot of confidence. And I've said this before with other bikes and other suspension jobs, but what I'm looking for is something confident. Or something that makes me feel confident when I'm on it. After I get used to the bike, I just start looking at the trail and start attacking the trail, and I'm no longer thinking about like, oh no, what's the front tire gonna do? Is it gonna deflect up that? Is it not? Am I gonna have traction? I don't think about that. I'm just kind of flowing with the bike, and that is the best compliment that I can give this, is that when I'm riding this now, I'm not thinking about the suspension. I forget about it, because it's just working underneath me, and it's giving me the traction I need. It's absorbing the rocks and the chop and the bumps and those types of things so well that I just have confidence with it. And I think that's the best thing I can say about it. So wrapping up, I had a really good experience with Kreft Moto. It's something that I would recommend to anyone out there who's thinking about doing it. They're very good at the mail-in thing. They've got that thing dialed in, and the bike is awesome after having this. I will use Kreft Moto again in the future, and I think that it's something that you guys should try. Keep in mind again though, that so much of this is about having a suspension tuner that is willing to go the extra mile with you after you've got it on the bike, to do that follow-up with you and to figure out, are you liking it? And maybe to give you some ideas of like, well, if it's not working in this situation, here's something you should try. That is so key with this. And my experience with Kreft Moto is that they are committed to making sure that you're happy with this. Because honestly, if they can't please you, you're gonna tell your friends that it sucks, and that's gonna really hurt their business. So they're committed to helping every one of the customers out, and they're making their best educated guess. They know what works and what doesn't work for them, and they've got a bunch of different test riders, and they've got a bunch of settings and baselines and all these things, but ultimately every one of us is an individual, and they don't know precisely what you want. What you want is different from what I want, and what I want is different from what someone else wants, and all these different things, so they're making their best judgment call. and they did a very good job with me, and I think they'll do a good job with you. Again, I don't review everything on the channel. If I hate something, I don't put up a full review on it. I just don't, because I don't want to run companies through the mud. By the time you've seen a full review, it's because I'm like, this company is legit, I like their product, I like their service, and I want to show it to you. So there's my soapbox. If you like these videos, please remember to share them with your friends, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support me, I didn't get paid to do this, by the way. I did not get paid a dime to do this, and I don't have a promo code or anything for this. The way that you can help me is by using the links down in the description when you're buying parts. You can go to Patreon and support me. You can support me by using my Amazon links. I would really appreciate it, because this is how I'm supporting my family now, and money is tighter than ever. Not begging, I'm just saying, hey, if you want to support me, there's a few different ways that you can do it. Occasionally we do dirt bike giveaways. This bike happens to be a bike that we're giving away. This video probably came out after this bike was already awarded to someone else, so I'm not going to pound that thing, but stay tuned, because we do dirt bike sweepstakes where you can enter to win a bike by buying something off my website, dirtbikechannel.com. That's all I've got for you today, guys. It was a really good experience with the Kreft Moto guys, and I suggest that you take a hard look at them. Thanks.